Hello and welcome to Indus News, live from Islamabad. I'm Jawad Tehomi and these are the headlines. The United Arab Emirates and Israel have signed a US-brokered peace deal to normalize diplomatic relations. Under the deal, Israel has agreed to suspend applying sovereignty to areas of West Bank it was planning to annex. The agreement was sealed in a phone call involving US President Donald Trump, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, and Abu Dhabi Crown Prince Sheikh Mohammed bin Zayed. The Pakistan Army says India is using terrorism as a tool to destabilize its neighboring countries. In a press briefing, military's media wing spokesperson Major General Babar Iftikhar said India is involved in terrorist activities in Pakistan. He added that India's racist ideology and hegemonic designs are jeopardizing peace in South Asia. The spokesman went on to say that India is systematically trying to change the demography of occupied Kashmir. Responding to a question, he said Pakistan shares good ties with Saudi Arabia and would continue to do so. In Lebanon, the parliament has approved a 2-week state of emergency that grants sweeping powers to the army, citing the exceptional circumstances in the country following a massive explosion in Beirut earlier this month. The state of emergency allows the army to curb free speech, freedom of assembly and press, as well as to arrest anyone deemed a security threat. The country has been rocked by violent protests over the explosion that left over 200 people dead and more than 6,000 injured. India has reported the highest daily coronavirus cases in the world today, with 67,000 new infections and 942 deaths. In the US, 1,500 people have died from COVID-19 in the past 24 hours, taking the toll to over 166,000 with more than 5 million cases. While Brazil's death toll has risen by 1,175 to over 104,000. Pakistan has reported 10 deaths overnight, taking the count to 6,139. Globally, over 749,000 people have lost their lives to the virus, with more than 20.6 million infected. Those were the headlines and detailed stories. Right after a short break, stay tuned. Welcome back, and now for the news in detail. The United Arab Emirates and Israel have signed a US-brokered peace deal to normalize diplomatic relations. Under the deal, Israel has agreed to suspend applying sovereignty to areas of West Bank it was planning to annex. The agreement was sealed in a phone call involving US President Donald Trump, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, and Abu Dhabi Crown Prince Sheikh Mohammed bin Zayed. Until now, Israel has had no diplomatic relations with the Gulf Arab countries. President Donald Trump has called it a great breakthrough. The agreement marks only the third Israel-Arab peace deal since Israel's declaration of independence in 1948. Egypt signed a deal in 1979 and Jordan in 1994. The Pakistan Army says India is using terrorism as a tool to destabilizing its neighboring countries. In a press briefing, military's media wing spokesperson said India's racist ideology and hegemonic designs are jeopardizing peace in South Asia. Major General Babar Iftikhar said Pakistan Army is aware of India's intentions and is fully capable of responding to any threat. The spokesman added that India is systematically trying to change the demography of occupied Kashmir. He said genocide is being done and human rights are being violated through India's state terrorism in the occupied region. He went on to say that 16 civilians have been killed and over 150 wounded in 1,927 ceasefire violations by India along the LOC this year. Touching upon other regional issues, the spokesperson said Pakistan played a pivotal role for the Afghan peace. He hoped that the warring sides in Afghanistan will soon start intra-Afghan talks. Pakistan's Foreign Office has summoned a senior Indian diplomat to protest ceasefire violations by Indian forces along the line of control. In a statement, the Foreign Office said Indian forces are continuously targeting civilians from across the LOC. On Wednesday, 2 civilians were wounded in unprovoked Indian fighting in the Jandarot sector along the LOC. The Foreign Office said India has committed over 1,900 ceasefire violations this year alone, killing 16 people and injuring 160. Islamabad has repeatedly asked New Delhi to respect the 2003 ceasefire agreement between the two countries. Pakistan's coronavirus death rate continues to decline as 10 people have died from the coronavirus during the past 24 hours, bringing the toll to 6,139. The Health Ministry says 753 new infections have been reported in a day. The country's total number of active cases is 16,475. Whereas over 264,000 people have recovered so far, as the country reports a remarkable 91% recovery rate. The country has over 1,800 ventilators, of which only 144 are currently occupied by critical patients. With 735 hospitals with COVID facilities, Pakistan's healthcare facilities are fully equipped in dealing with the pandemic. In the US, 1,500 people have died from COVID-19 in the past 24 hours, taking the toll to over 166,000 with more than 5 million cases. While Brazil's death toll has risen by 1,175 to over 104,000. Globally, over 749,000 people have lost their lives to the coronavirus, with more than 20.5 million infected. This report has the details.
The COVID-19 raging through Americas, India, South Africa is now causing worries in parts of Europe and Australia. Deaths in Latin America continues to pile up as the overwhelmed healthcare systems crumble. Deaths in Latin America continue to pile up as the overwhelmed healthcare system crumbles under a load of thousands testing positive every day. Mexico has recorded 737 deaths overnight, increasing the tally to over 54,000. Despite leading the world in death toll and number of cases, U.S. President Donald Trump insists on reopening schools in the country.
I feel very badly for him. And I have a feeling that on November 4th, somebody's going to announce schools are open, the country's open, everything's open. I really believe a lot of it's done for political reasons, if you want to know the truth. I think so.
England is using a new contact tracing app for logging the spread of the virus as new spikes in Spain and Italy sound alarm bells in the region. Elsewhere, Australia is struggling to contain the second wave as Victoria and Melbourne continue to report hundreds of new cases. Over in New Zealand, authorities are scrambling to trace the source of a new outbreak in the country as fresh lockdown restrictions are imposed.
There are 13 new confirmed cases of COVID-19 to report in the community. They are all in Auckland, and they are all linked to the 4 people who we reported as confirmed cases yesterday and the day before. We will put the details of these cases up on our website, as we have in the past. That means we now have a total of 14 new confirmed cases to report today.
Mainland China has reported 19 new cases, down from 25 the previous day. South Korea has recorded 56 new infections as local transmission continues to be a spot of concern for authorities.
India has reported another record spike in COVID-19 cases, with 67,000 testing positive in the past 24 hours. The virus epicenter of Asia, India has the world's third highest infections of nearly 2.4 million. The Health Ministry said 942 people have died overnight, increasing the death toll to over 47,000. India has also reported one of the highest infections in doctors as well, as the virus continues to exhaust the country's already overwhelmed system. At a hospital in Bihar's Bhagalpur, there is only one doctor to tend to a burdening number of patients.
There should be at least 4 doctors posted here, but there are only 3 here, and one of them has been sent on deputation. The other one has tested positive for coronavirus, and so I am the only one left here.
India's former President Pranab Mukherjee continues to be on ventilator support, while Cabinet Minister Shripad Naik has also tested positive for the virus. In India's Bengaluru, an emergency law prohibiting gatherings has been imposed after 3 people were killed in clashes over blasphemous social media posts. The victims were Muslim men aged between 19 and 21. Baton-wielding police are on patrol through barricaded and deserted streets in the parts of the southern Indian tech hub. Police say, along with 110 protesters, the person responsible for the offensive post has been arrested. This incident adds to the rising Hindu extremism in India under Prime Minister Narendra Modi's RSS-inspired Bharatiya Janata Party. Last year, New Delhi enacted a discriminatory citizenship law, sparking violent protests across the country. The Taliban claim they have reliable intelligence information that ISIS intends to attack their prisoners after their release from Pul-e-Charki jail in Kabul. Taliban spokesman Zabiullah Mujahid said the aim was to disrupt intra-Afghan negotiations. He asked Kabul to take the threat seriously and ensure all the measures necessary to prevent the attack. President Ashraf Ghani has signed a decree for the release of the remaining 400 Taliban prisoners to pave the way for intra-Afghan talks. Once the inmates are released, the negotiations will most likely start in Doha. In Lebanon, the parliament has approved a 2-week state of emergency that grants sweeping powers to the army, citing the exceptional circumstances in the country following a massive explosion in Beirut last week. The state of emergency allows the army to curb free speech, freedom of assembly and press, as well as to arrest anyone deemed a security threat. Only one parliamentarian out of the 119-member chamber opposed the decision. The country has been rocked by violent protests over the explosion that left more than 200 dead and more than 6,000 injured. Even Prime Minister Hassan Diab's resignation failed to pacify the protesters. In the first legislative session since the blast, Lebanon's parliament speaker called for a quick formation of a new government. The US says the Iranian Navy briefly seized a Liberian-flagged oil tanker near the strategic Strait of Hormuz. The US military released a black and white video showing special forces fast roping down from a helicopter onto the tanker in eastern coast of the UAE. They said the Iranian Navy held the vessel named MV Vala for nearly 5 hours before releasing it. The US military Central Command said the vessel had made no distress calls before, during and after the seizure. It said the Iranian helicopter involved appeared to be a Sikorsky SH-3 Sea King, which only Iran's Navy operates. Neither Iran nor the UAE have responded to the US claim yet. The US President Donald Trump and Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan have discussed ways to achieve a demilitarized zone in central Libya over a telephone call. The US Embassy in Libya said the two leaders also discussed a complete withdrawal of the foreign forces and mercenaries from Libya. This discussion over a phone call was followed by a visit from US envoy Richard Nordland to senior Turkish officials in Ankara. The meeting in Ankara also underscored the importance of UN-facilitated political dialogue with full respect for Libya's sovereignty. Earlier in the week, Nordland visited Cairo, where he discussed ways to bring peace to the war-torn North African nation with Egyptian officials. Libya's National Oil Corporation has warned of worsening blackouts in the east due to a months-long blockade of oil and gas facilities. In a statement, the company said imports of diesel to operate power stations had caused it severe financial difficulties. The state-run power company in eastern Libya said shortages of fuel and gas had led to a 270 megawatt deficit in electricity supplies. The NOC said the closure of oil fields and ports had led to a drop in fuel production at local refineries. Libya is split between rival factions and governments based in the west and the east. Turkey says it is ready to cooperate with Iraq to eliminate the Kurdistan Workers' Party in the region. The foreign ministry says PKK presence also threatens Iraq and it is Baghdad's responsibility to take measures against the militants. In a statement, the ministry said Turkey will continue cross-border operations against the fighters if Iraq does not act. It said Ankara is determined to take the measures it deems necessary for its border security, no matter where it may be. The PKK took up arms against the Turkish state in 1984. Turkey holds the militants responsible for killing of some 40,000 people in a 30-year conflict. Greece says it is ready to enter a dialogue with Turkey to resolve the issue of the Eastern Mediterranean as per the international laws. Earlier, Turkish Defense Minister Hulusi Akar proposed the talks, saying Ankara wants to be a good neighbor to Athens. In a televised address, Greek Prime Minister Kyriakos Mitsotakis said the talks must not be under a climate of tension and provocation. He said Greece seeks to build bridges of peace and good faith, but will not stand any blackmail. Meanwhile, France says it will temporarily increase its military presence in the Eastern Mediterranean in the coming days. In a statement, President Emmanuel Macron said the step has been taken in view of the escalating tensions between Greece and Turkey. The two NATO allies disagree over overlapping claims to hydrocarbon resources in the region. It's time for a short break. We'll be back with more stories. Stay tuned. Russia's President Vladimir Putin has urged Azerbaijan and Armenia to avoid actions that could inflame tensions. Earlier in July, tensions along the Azerbaijan-Armenia border escalated, killing 11 Azeris and 6 Armenians. The Russian state media says Putin discussed regional issues with his Azeri counterpart Ilham Aliyev in a phone call. It said the presidents also exchanged views on the worsening situation on the Azeri and Armenian state border. For his part, President Aliyev congratulated Putin on the registration of a coronavirus vaccine. Kremlin said the two leaders also discussed strengthening bilateral partnership in all the areas. A Russian fighter jet has intercepted a U.S. plane and a maritime patrol aircraft over the Black Sea. In a statement, the Defense Ministry said its aircraft approached the U.S. planes at a safe distance and prevented them from violating Russia's state border. The ministry said the intercepted planes were a reconnaissance aircraft, a U.S. RC-135, and a P-8A maritime patrol aircraft. It said the actions of Russian warplane were in strict compliance with international rules for the use of airspace. The ministry said its control systems detected 2 targets flying over neutral waters of the Black Sea towards Russia's border yesterday as well. U.S. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo says Washington is considering sanctioning Belarus over the ongoing violence in the country. More in this report.
Belarus is navigating one of the biggest political crises in its post-Soviet history after the opposition rejected official results of the presidential election. Massive protests followed President Alexander Lukashenko's landslide re-election victory. The US and the European Union also discredited the results of the presidential polls in Belarus over rigging allegations. US Secretary of State Mike Pompeo says Washington is considering what it can do to multilaterally deliver a good outcome for the Belarusians.
As you said, we were incredibly troubled by the election and deeply disappointed that it wasn't more free and more fair. We've seen this behavior before, and we regret that this is how it's transpired. Then we've watched the violence in the aftermath, peaceful protesters being treated in ways that are inconsistent with how they should be treated.
The UN has also condemned the use of violence by Belarusian authorities on peaceful demonstrations. UN Human Rights Chief said police were reported to have used excessive force on the protesters. Meanwhile, Lithuania, Poland and Latvia have offered to mediate between the Belarusian government and the opposition. Lithuania's president has proposed a three-point plan to help resolve the situation.
First, the Belarusian government's institutions cease the use of violence against their citizens and de-escalate the situation. Second, Belarusian government releases detainees who are in thousands, all protest participants who have undergone repression up until now. And the third point is Belarusian institutions. Belarus renews dialogue with its civil society.
The European Union has called an extraordinary foreign ministers meeting tomorrow to discuss the situation in Belarus.
UK's chief Brexit negotiator David Frost says the UK's assessment is that a withdrawal agreement can be reached with the EU in September. In a tweet, Frost said London is not looking for a special or unique agreement. He said UK wants a deal like the EU has agreed to with other friendly countries. Frost said UK's sovereignty over laws, courts, fishing waters is not up for discussion. Frost added that London is not looking for anything which threatens the integrity of the EU single market. Prime Minister Boris Johnson is scheduled to visit Northern Ireland for talks. He will firm up ties badly strained by several years of acrimonious Brexit negotiations. The United States and Slovenia have entered into an agreement for added security and cooperation over the development of 5G networks. U.S. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo signed a joint declaration on 5G technology with Slovenia's Foreign Minister Anže Logar in July. Media reports suggest that the agreement has effectively banned Chinese firms from becoming 5G technology suppliers to Slovenia. Pompeo, who is on a Central European tour, also met Slovenian Prime Minister Janez Janša. Slovenia becomes the latest in a string of Eastern European countries to ink such agreements with the US. Poland and Czech Republic already have such agreements with Washington. These countries pledged that their 5G suppliers would not be under the control of the foreign governments without independent judicial review. In California, state of the U.S., a wildfire in North Los Angeles has forced a mandatory evacuation orders for some 500 homes. State authorities say more than 300 firefighters are battling the flames that have burnt over 10,000 acres in just 3 hours. Helicopters and fixed-wing aircraft have also been deployed to fight the blaze. Earlier, the U.S. Department of Agriculture said a firefighter assigned a stagecoach fire had died. Wildfires have become more frequent and bigger in California in recent years. In November 2018, over 80 people were killed in the deadliest fire in the state's history, the campfire. A new species of dinosaur related to the Tyrannosaurus rex has been discovered in the south coast of England. In a statement, Southampton University paleontologists said they have spent months studying 4 bones that were found last year on the Isle of Wight. The paleontologists said they have determined that the bones were from the neck, back and tail of the new dinosaur. They named the dinosaur Victinoveneta inopinatus, a name that refers to large air sacs in some of the bones. Chris Barker, a PhD student at the university, said they were amazed as to how hollow this animal was. He said parts of its skeleton must have been rather delicate. The Isle of Wight is one of the top locations for dinosaur remains and fossils in Europe. A Tokyo entertainment company is tapping into a growing virtual reality travel market for Japanese grounded by coronavirus travel restrictions. More about this flight service in this report.
In Japan, the entertainment company First Airline has boomed its virtual reality traveling experience since the pandemic began. Grounded travelers sat in first-class seats in a mock jetliner cabin where they are served in-flight meals and drinks. The aircraft exterior views of passing clouds and the plane taking off projected on the side for a simulated experience. Virtual reality goggles provide further immersive tours at destinations including Paris, New York, Rome, and Hawaii.
There are customers who chose us because they couldn't travel overseas due to coronavirus. There are also customers who used to go to Hawaii every year, but now they can't do that, so they came here to enjoy a trip to Hawaii. We are seeing a sharp increase in such customers.
Japanese businessman Katsuo Inoue and his wife chose Italy for this year's summer vacation. He enjoyed the trimmings of a first-class cabin and soaked up sights of Florence and Rome without ever leaving Tokyo.
I often go overseas for business, but I haven't been to Italy. Although I saw it virtually only, my impression was rather good because I could get an actual sense of seeing things there.
At first airlines, where passengers are even given a pre-flight safety demonstration with a life vest and oxygen masks, bookings went up 50% since the pandemic began. It first started business in 2016, aiming to provide a virtual travel experience with low cost and targeting those who did not have much time to travel.
More stories to follow, but right after a short break. US stocks are trading slightly lower after traders digested better than expected unemployment data. The number of new claims for unemployment benefits in the US dropped below 1 million last week. The Dow Jones Industrial Average is trading lower fractionally, while the S&P 500 is also trading marginally lower. The Nasdaq Composite Index is trading higher by about 1%. Meanwhile, oil prices held largely steady after the International Energy Agency lowered its 2020 oil demand forecast. In the UEFA Champions League, Paris Saint-Germain beat Atalanta in a nail-biting contest to book their place in the last four. Two injury-time goals from Marquinhos and Eric Maxim were enough to help them beat Atalanta 2-1. Mario Pasalic opened the scoring for Atalanta in the first half. PSG were labouring up front with half an hour to go when Kylian Mbappe came on and changed the game. But Marquinhos put PSG level in the last minute of the normal time. In the dying moments of the game, Mbappe slotted home the winner to take his side to the next round. Preliminary rounds and the EFL Cup first round will be made on the 18th of August. Arsenal beat London rivals Chelsea in the 2020 final for a record-extending 14th triumph in the competition. And that is all for now. For the latest updates, you can follow us on social media at Indus News.